I don't understand how you can disrespect your partner so much as to approach him and directly say that you want an extramarital relationship. I believe that if a married couple starts a similar conversation, then they need to get divorced immediately or solve the problem with the help of a psychologist. But my wife decided to go the other way. If you truly love me, you'll allow me to do this. How many husbands have heard those words from their wives' lips? That was what my wife uttered to me during what was supposed to be a romantic dinner celebrating our 5th anniversary. And then everything fell apart. So, how did we reach this juncture? My stunning 29-year-old wife just disclosed her desire to engage in extramarital affairs. She was straightforward about it. At least it seemed plain and simple to me. I had arranged a splendid dinner at one of our favorite upscale restaurants, complete with white tablecloths and a respectable wine selection. I even purchased her a diamond necklace she had been hinting at since her birthday. I spent nearly $1,000 on that necklace, and now I need to figure out how to get my money back. During the meal, I sensed her unease, which shifted our usual relaxed conversation into a somewhat forced state. She appeared distracted, her eyes darting around the room as if searching for something or someone. Typically, she'd meet my gaze when speaking, but tonight she avoided eye contact, focusing instead on the table or her wine glass. As we finished the main course and poured another glass of wine, she finally broached the topic weighing on her mind. "Honey, there's something I've been wanting to talk to you about. It's been bothering me for a while now, and I feel like I need to address it." Setting down my wine glass, I paused, wondering what could be troubling her. Her voice took on a serious tone, indicating the importance of the matter. What was it that was preoccupying her? My mind immediately jumped to the possibility that she was about to discuss the prospect of starting a family. We'd broached the topic before, numerous times over the past 3 years, but opted to postpone parenthood until we had made more progress in our careers and saved up a larger nest egg to cover the expenses. Well, we'd achieved those goals, and I was eager to expand our family. Was she ready to? I hoped fervently that this was the topic she wanted to discuss. However, her avoidance of eye contact suggested otherwise. Typically, if someone wants to discuss starting a family, they'd wear a wide grin and maintain unwavering eye contact. What was going on? "Darling, there's something I want to discuss that you might not agree with at this moment, but it's something I've carefully considered and it's important to me." Andrea, my wife of 5 years, paused before speaking. "I feel the need to venture beyond our relationship and explore life. I believe it will help me understand myself better and ultimately make me a better partner for you." I was left dumbfounded, a whirlwind of confusion, bewilderment, and anger sweeping through me simultaneously. What the hell? "I'm sorry." "What?" I interjected, pressing my hands firmly onto the table, locking eyes with her, my face a portrait of utter perplexity. Avoiding my gaze, she continued, "I want to pursue other connections, Rob. I want your consent in advance so there won't be any unpleasant surprises." My frustration surged, my pulse quickening, and tension rising. "What kind of connections are we talking about, Andrea?" Her response was evasive. "Possibly various kinds, I suppose." My confusion mounted with each passing second as my breaths grew more labored, my lungs resisting the intake of air. "Could you clarify a bit, please?" I interjected, my tone direct, holding my breath. "Well, I'm considering seeing other men." "What the hell are you talking about, Andrea? You want to cheat and expect me to be okay with it before you go off and sleep with other guys? Good Lord." My voice escalated, and I realized some nearby diners might have overheard. "Lower your voice, dear. No need for everyone to eavesdrop on our conversation," Andrea urged, attempting to hush me. I realized she intended to drop this piece of news on me in a public setting to prevent a scene. She caught me off guard, really got me. I felt nauseous, my stomach twisted in knots. All I could manage was a bewildered, "Why?" Why do you want to see other men, Andrea? Well, I feel I need space to discover myself. Discover yourself? What does that even mean, Andrea? Are you suggesting you want to sleep with other men? Are you leaving me? No, darling, I'm not leaving you. There are various reasons why I feel compelled to do this. But please believe me, I love you deeply. You're my soulmate. I envision a future together, starting a family, growing old together. Right now, though, I need to explore certain aspects of myself that I'm not experiencing currently. I want your permission to explore these things, that's all. It would only be for a few months, and then I'd be yours and only yours again, Rob, your wife. I promise. All right, this scenario was pretty much the worst-case scenario my simple mind could conjure. During our 5th anniversary dinner, my wife dropped a bombshell. She expressed her desire to sleep with other men. She expected me to passively accept this arrangement, promising to resume our marriage once she felt satisfied as if nothing had transpired, but assuredly as a better wife for it. I was dumbfounded, speechless. I couldn't muster a response. My mind went blank. I couldn't even breathe. Standing up, I delicately placed my napkin on the table, picked up my wine glass and finished its contents, carefully set it down, then turned and left the restaurant. Darling, where are you going? I don't know, but I think you need to take a cab home. I left the restaurant, found my car, started it up, shifted into gear, and simply drove off. I had no destination in mind. My head throbbed with pain, originating from the back, but spreading throughout. Time and location became a blur. The following morning, awakening in my car, I struggled to recognize my surroundings. Exiting the vehicle, I stretched and yawned, attempting to piece together the events of the previous night, hoping it was all a terrible dream. Desperately needing to urinate and craving a large cup of coffee, I realized I had to sort out my thoughts before returning home. I relieved myself in the bushes a few yards away from my car, then returned to my vehicle, started the engine, and set off in search of the coffee I desperately needed. Finding a small diner, I grabbed some breakfast to accompany the coffee, all the while contemplating how to address this issue. Allowing my wife to engage with other men was out of the question. It would undoubtedly spell the end of our marriage. Despite her revelations last night, doubts about her true nature crept in. Perhaps she was experiencing a breakdown, detached from reality and indulging in fantasies. I couldn't be certain. I'm no psychiatrist, just a bewildered husband. Glancing at my cell phone, I realized it had been turned off overnight. Upon powering it up, I found multiple missed calls and text messages from Andrea, expressing concern about my whereabouts and well-being. At that moment, the idea of returning home held little appeal. Nevertheless, I knew I had to face it eventually. Ignoring her attempts to reach me, I continued my journey. Over a few cups of coffee accompanied by some eggs and bacon, I devised a rough plan outlining what I needed to do. Time to head home. Upon pulling into our driveway, Andrea emerged from the front door to greet me. Sweetheart, where were you all night? I was so worried about you. I feared you might have had an accident and ended up in a ditch somewhere. She leaned in for a kiss, but I stepped back and informed her. Andrea, I'm going to freshen up with a shower first, then we need to have a serious conversation. We have to discuss your journey of self-discovery, as you mentioned last night. I brushed past her and headed upstairs to the bedroom, shedding the suit I'd worn through the night. Taking a long, hot shower, I mulled over some of the things I needed to say to her. Uncertain of the outcome, I felt compelled to take action, to gauge whether we still had a marriage or if this was her way of bidding farewell. Perhaps it was a test of my devotion to her. I was completely in the dark about her thoughts. I thought I loved her. Hell, I married her. She professed her love for me, too. We had a lavish wedding and a memorable trip to Europe to celebrate. I've never strayed, never even considered other women. But she doesn't seem to share the same commitment. Not at all. Luckily, we don't have any children. Whether we ever will depends on what unfolds in the coming days and weeks. After changing into fresh clothes, I headed to the kitchen where I brewed another cup of coffee and grabbed a notepad and pen. Andrea was already there, perched at the island, observing me intently. Though I tried to appear composed inwardly, I was a turmoil. I poured myself some coffee and took a seat. All right, Andrea, explain to me once more why you feel the need to pursue relationships outside of our marriage. Darling, I crave validation as a woman. Right now, I don't feel like my needs are being fulfilled. I need the freedom to explore and see if I can find that fulfillment independently. So, are you suggesting you want to temporarily leave me to figure out what you want? No, darling. I'm not suggesting leaving. I intend to stay right here with you in our home, but I need autonomy over my time and actions. When do you plan to start this exploration and establish your new schedule, Andrea? Well, I suppose any time works for me. Do you support my decision to do this? No, I don't support any of this, Andrea. When we got married, we vowed to be partners and lovers for life. And now you want to seek intimacy elsewhere. What am I supposed to make of this? I feel like you're ready to walk away from our marriage. Darling, it's different from that. I'm searching for a connection between us that we've been lacking for a couple of years now. Our lives revolve around work, work, work. We don't have as much fun as we used to. I don't feel valued in the way you used to when we first got married. Valued? My God, everything I do is for you. I've been working tirelessly so we can build a family and achieve the dreams we talked about when we got married. This house is nearly paid off, for heaven's sake. I could feel my anger rising and had to calm down before I lost my temper completely. Are you considering sleeping with other men? That question stopped me in my tracks. I had to address it head-on before anything else. Darling, I'm not sure what I'll do yet. If the circumstances and person are right, I might consider it. So, you're planning to cheat on me. It's not about cheating on you, Rob. It's not cheating if you're aware of it. Oh, goodness. I was feeling incredibly stressed at that moment, and I had to take a deep breath and exhale slowly to maintain my focus. Got it. I paused for a moment, taking a long sip of my coffee, wishing it was something much stronger. I needed to control my emotions and get through this. So, let me make sure I understand, Andrea. You're going to date other men, go on dates, and maybe go to bed with them. And you plan to do all this while still staying here at home. Is that correct so far? Sweetheart, it's not as straightforward as that. I don't know, Andrea. It seems pretty straightforward to me. Are you suggesting we do anything together during this time? You're still married, you know. Are we just pausing our marriage for a while? Do you expect us to still be intimate while you're doing this? Of course, Rob, we're a family, you and me. I love you dearly and want us to stay a family. This is just something I feel I need to do occasionally to figure things out for myself. How often do you plan on doing this, Andrea? Every weekend, a couple of times during the week, nightly? How much exploring are you planning? I'm not sure yet, darling. Why are you so concerned about the frequency? Well, I need to decide what I'm going to do while you're dating and having fun with your new potential partners. I don't have a boyfriend, Rob, at least not yet. I took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. I was on the verge of losing my temper and had to exert considerable effort to avoid damaging something at that moment. Andrea, I need to clarify some things in my mind before we leave today. Have you truly decided that this is what you want? Have you considered the impact on our marriage? Andrea nodded, but didn't directly address my question. It seemed she hadn't fully considered how I might feel about her decision. She hadn't considered that I might have my own thoughts on the matter. And then she said it. If you love me, you'll let me do this. I retorted, Andrea, if you truly love me, you won't go through with this. That was the boundary I drew. Honey, I've decided that this is what I'm going to do. You can't convince me otherwise. That was it. That ultimatum would determine our future. Our marriage would never be the same. She hadn't considered the consequences enough to realize that premeditated infidelity is a deal-breaker in marriage. Now, my strategy had to be put into action. "All right, these are my terms, and they're non-negotiable," I stated, outlining what she needed to do if she wanted to pursue other relationships. "You'll need to find a new place to live while you're doing this. I won't share a home with you while you're dating and sleeping with other men, and don't even think about bringing them here. That's off the table." "Darling, where am I supposed to go?" "Well, maybe you could stay with one of your friends." "What about Jessica, that woman from school you've been spending so much time with?" "You mentioned she's divorced and lives alone. Give her a call and see if you can stay with her for a while. If that doesn't work out, you can look into renting a short-term apartment. But you'll have to cover all the expenses, utilities, and your car payments." Andrea, a grade 3 teacher at the elementary school, earned a comfortable income. Meanwhile, I worked as a forensic auditor at a large firm, also enjoying a good salary supplemented by annual bonuses. "It seems I may not be meeting all your needs in our relationship," I acknowledged. Andrea met my gaze for the first time, sensing victory in our ongoing struggle. Continuing, I pondered. "If you're suggesting an open marriage, then I suppose I'll need to be understanding while you pursue other affairs. Will you still return home to me, Andrea, once it's all said and done?" "Darling, I understand. I love you deeply. You're my spouse. I desire us to build a family together. And what do you expect me to do while you're out with other men? Do you expect me to remain faithful? Should I just sit at home, waiting for you to finish with your boyfriends, then welcome you back with open arms? Is that what you anticipate, Andrea? Have you even considered how this will affect me? I want you as my spouse, and only you. Whatever happens while I'm away won't matter once I come back to you. I want you to be my partner and the father of our children." I found it peculiar. She seemed to have accepted that I wouldn't allow her to bring other men into our home for intimacy. Perhaps she thought that was a victory for her. She gets to socialize with other men without me intervening. "All right, figure out where you'll stay and let me know by the end of the week. For now, we need to address some matters here. Please move your belongings to the spare bedroom. I'm not sure if I can share the same bed with you right now. Your plan is too painful. It feels like you're leaving me without explicitly saying it. So tell me what I should make of this." Andrea's silence indicated to me that she was beginning to understand that I wouldn't passively accept the situation. Perhaps she was taken aback by my insistence on her leaving our bed. However, what did she anticipate? Did she truly believe I would naively allow her to wander off and engage in infidelity, only to return home expecting us to carry on as a happy couple, have children, and live a normal life? Absolutely not. Andrea had developed a close relationship with another teacher, Jessica, and I suspected that she might be the source of some of Andrea's foolishness. Jessica, a divorced grade 4 teacher at the same school where my wife worked, had been kicked out by her husband 2 years prior, after he discovered her infidelities with multiple partners. At 35, Jessica was an attractive woman with an appealing physique, but her downfall lay in her tendency to engage with any man who showed interest. I had a hunch that Jessica's influence might be driving Andrea's desire to explore herself before starting a family. For me, the harsh reality was that if Andrea continued down this path of exploration, there wouldn't be a family, at least not with me. Instead, the only outcome would likely be a divorce. I rose from the table and began to walk away. Andrea inquired, "Is this the end, Rob? Are you asking me to leave?" "Yeah, that's the current situation. Andrea, don't misunderstand me. I don't want this at all. We made a commitment to be faithful when we got married. You're intending to break that commitment, so what do you expect me to do? Do you expect me to sit idly by while you engage with other men? If you desire an open marriage, then I suppose I have the same right." Andrea was left speechless, and I departed before the situation could escalate into a heated argument. I grabbed my car keys and headed out of the house. "Where are you off to, honey?" "I'm not entirely sure yet, but remember to move your belongings to the spare room and start searching for a place to stay. Just remember, you don't get to betray our marriage until you've moved out." I turned and departed, slamming the door with more force than usual. If it came down to it, I was ready to be the one to leave. But given that my wife instigated this messed-up situation, she could deal with the inconvenience. Moreover, I suspected that Jessica, that promiscuous woman, was influencing Andrea into this, so let her take responsibility. Despite my urge to drive to Jessica's place and confront her, I had to restrain myself. On Monday morning, I woke up early and left my office before Andrea even got out of bed. With Andrea's intentions looming over me, I knew I had a lot of work to do on my plan. I refused to tolerate her infidelity. If she had decided to end our marriage, then I needed to take action. The thought of her cheating on me hurt deeply. I couldn't stand by while she engaged in extramarital affairs and then pretend everything was fine when she returned home. What if she contracted a disease or became pregnant? That was not an option. My first step was to call my lawyer. He was a friend who handled our more routine legal matters like real estate and wills. I didn't expect him to handle the divorce proceedings himself, but I knew he could recommend a competent attorney. He came through, referring me to a skilled divorce lawyer at his firm. My meeting with her was scheduled for that afternoon. It was a challenging meeting, but my new attorney proved to be a skilled litigator and well-versed in the laws of our state. I didn't intend for our divorce to be contentious. In fact, I was content with a fair 50-50 division of our assets. Both of us had little when we married and had worked hard to build a comfortable life and family together until now. So I was satisfied with splitting things evenly. I'm not entirely heartless. The necessary paperwork would be prepared and held until I had evidence that my wife was indeed involved with other men. Until then, this was merely a preliminary step on my part. The week dragged on slowly. I made an effort to minimize my time at home and instead went out every evening, often heading to the gym to relieve stress. I observed that Andrea was frequently with Jessica, and on Thursday, she informed me she'd be staying with her for a few weeks until finding a better living arrangement. I understood it would provide her a convenient spot to spend time with her boyfriends without interruption from me. Jessica would probably be hosting her own partners simultaneously, making it quite the gathering. Good Lord, this situation was a mess. On Saturday, after being married for 5 years and 1 week, my wife confirmed her decision to engage in extramarital relations by packing her belongings into her car and leaving. Just before departing, she hesitated, saying, "Honey, don't I want to leave? Can't we find a way to work things out so I can stay? I love you deeply and I truly want to improve our marriage." In response, I said, "Andrea, if you truly loved me and desired a better marriage, you wouldn't pursue this course of action. While I want you here with me, I cannot accept you being intimate with other men while you're still my wife. I love you, but I won't tolerate that behavior. Let's go to marriage counseling together to address our issues. If you refuse, I'm at a loss for words. So please, leave." As she loaded her belongings into her car, I drove to the hardware store to purchase new locks for the house. I changed 3 locks and updated the security code for the garage door opener. On Saturday night and throughout Sunday, I remained at home, gazing at the walls, hoping Andrea would regain her senses and return home. The following week proved exceedingly challenging. Each day I visited the gym and resumed running in an attempt to alleviate my stress. At times, I felt profoundly despondent, contemplating pleading with her to come back. Mentally, I struggled to comprehend that my wife was choosing to engage in extramarital affairs while we remained married. I grappled with feelings of inadequacy, questioning if my worthlessness drove her to flaunt her infidelity. It seems that way, doesn't it? I conducted online research on the psychology of infidelity and the reasons behind spousal cheating. I was surprised to discover that approximately 40% of married individuals engage in infidelity. What's more surprising is that nearly 90% of them choose to remain in their marriages. Infidelity, whether by one or both partners, is often silently accepted by the other spouse. Factors such as children often come into play, making it easier for the betrayed spouse to overlook the infidelity, especially if it's discreet, and carry on as if nothing is amiss. Many cheating wives claim to still love their husbands and families but seek excitement outside of their marriage, something they feel is lacking at home. Many women engaged in affairs express that managing a household is demanding. With the daily responsibilities of maintaining a family and attending to children's activities leaving little room for excitement in their intimate lives with their husbands. They crave the thrill of being created by a partner focused solely on them, without routine conversations about household chores or children immediately after intimacy. Perhaps the secret to a successful marriage lies in treating one's spouse with the passion and attention typically reserved for a lover, without resorting to divorce. Simply relishing in the physical connection. Should I consider approaching my wife at the club she and Jessica plan to attend? Infidelity occurs for various reasons: lack of satisfaction, lack of passion, emotional disconnection between spouses, and sometimes as a form of retaliation for a partner's infidelity. Some women claim they cheat to salvage their marriages. Although I'm skeptical about that assertion, it's what researchers studying marital infidelity have reported. Marriage is intricate, requiring ongoing effort to nurture the relationship. An open marriage in which both spouses realize that they will have other relationships and partners rarely persists in the long term. Emotional connections are established, leading to eventual hurt feelings, often resulting in divorce. Polyamorous relationships are similarly complicated and tense, especially when children are involved. The constant threat of introducing sexually transmitted diseases into the relationship adds to the complexity. Personally, I believe monogamy is optimal in marriage, and if both partners don't agree, they shouldn't be married. They should seek different partners who share their views. Did I neglect my wife and push her away? Did I fail to give her enough attention while I pursued what I believed was necessary to build a life for us? Was I mistaken? I'm not sure. What I do know is that I was unhappy when my wife left our home to be with other men, seeking something she felt I couldn't provide. I didn't see her actions as beneficial to our marriage. And so another slow week passed by. I refrained from reaching out to my wife, and Andrea only messaged me once, requesting that I forward her mail. Her messages lacked any hint of a desire to salvage our marriage. They were strictly business. It was evident she was moving forward with her plan to seek out companionship, perhaps even multiple partners, for enjoyment. I contemplated shadowing her from the apartment to wherever she and Jessica went, curious about her rendezvous. Despite driving by the apartment multiple times, I resisted the urge to stop, realizing I couldn't subject myself to such surveillance. I needed to allow her to make her own choice. Otherwise, she'd never truly return to me. With each passing day, the likelihood of her reconciliation dwindled. Simultaneously, the longer she delayed her return, the less inclined I became to welcome her back. After a month of minimal communication, Andrea unexpectedly appeared at the house. Unable to unlock the door with her key, she resorted to ringing the doorbell and knocking. I answered. "Andrea, what brings you here today?" "Honey, my key doesn't seem to work anymore. What's going on?" "That's because I changed all the locks," I replied with a stoic expression. As Andrea attempted to enter the house, I blocked her path. "What do you want, Andrea?" "I came to retrieve a few belongings I left behind when I moved in with Jess." Once again, her visit wasn't about seeing me. It was purely business regarding her belongings. My feelings and any pain I might be experiencing didn't seem to matter to her. It was clear I was just an obstacle in her way. Did she truly believe I wouldn't care about her involvement with other men, and eventually take her back? "There are some boxes in the garage with your belongings that I gathered from around the house." "Why did you do that, honey?" I'll be returning home in a few months, so there's no need to pack everything up. I allowed her into the house. After all, it was still partly hers. We headed to the garage where she could see numerous boxes of her belongings ready for her to take. How long do you plan to stay with Jessica? She's been really supportive. I'll be staying with her for a while. I'm confident it'll only be for a few more months, and then I'll return and be an even better wife to you, honey. We can start a family. Then. I scoffed at that remark and internally cringed. Yeah, right. I wasn't convinced how sleeping with other men would somehow improve her as a wife or prepare her for motherhood. But in her convoluted reasoning, likely influenced by Jessica, that's what she chose to believe. Surely she must have known it was nonsense. I had my own thoughts on the matter. So, have you found a boyfriend yet? Andrea blushed at my question, and I could guess the answer. Jess and I have been on some dates with guys from our club, but that's about it. How do you like being close to your new boyfriends? Her face remained red as she rummaged through boxes for her things. Knowing the answer, I left the garage and returned to the kitchen for coffee and the newspaper. A few minutes later, she emerged with a bag of belongings, scanning the kitchen. I think she anticipated the house being in disarray while she was away. But it was quite the opposite. I had arranged for a cleaning service to come 3 times a week, so the place was immaculate. She seemed disappointed by the absence of mess. There were no stacks of dishes, no empty beer bottles, no heaps of laundry. The house was well maintained, while I struggled to keep myself composed, grappling with the fact that my wife had left me for other men. Is there anything else you require, Andrea? I could sense her curiosity about what was happening in her absence. So, honey, have things been all right since I started spending time with Jess? I'm okay. Work's been keeping me occupied. I've been traveling quite a bit. Honey, have you been getting out at all or just staying home alone? There it was, the question I'd anticipated. Remember what they say, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Time for me to subtly challenge her. I've been keeping myself busy. I joined a cycling group that has organized rides twice a week. We start from a specific point and ride together for 40 to 60 miles. It's been enjoyable. I've met a lot of new people, and we usually grab a beer and a burger afterwards. Cycling that distance definitely builds an appetite. Between working out and the stress she was causing me, I've lost 15 pounds in the past few weeks. Exercise was perhaps the only thing preventing a mental breakdown. I made sure to avoid excess alcohol. It wouldn't have helped. That's nice, she replied, her tone suggesting more interest in my activities than her response let on. My takeaway was that she wanted to know if I was meeting other women. Driving away from home, Andrea probably began to realize that her plan was not going as she expected. Perhaps her devoted husband met someone else and decided he didn't want to stay married to her. Perhaps her quest to find a boyfriend to compensate for the lack of attention in her marriage may have more serious consequences than she imagined. I found out that Andrea was dating 2 men from the club she attended with Jessica. She had a close relationship with both of them several times, but they weren't interested in her anymore. After these meetings, they were glad to leave Jessica's apartment. Both men were married and just looking for casual pleasure, and Andrea fulfilled this role. After 2 months, I realized that my marriage was over, and I needed to move on to the next stage of my plan. Andrea hadn't reached out to me in weeks, indicating she wasn't considering me or our marriage. It seemed she was pursuing her own desires without showing any interest in returning home. Even if she did, it would likely come with numerous conditions, and I wasn't certain I'd welcome her back. My concerns deepened when I discovered she had gone on vacation to the Dominican Republic with one of her boyfriends during the school break. They enjoyed a getaway in the sun, focusing on tanning and other activities. If that was her idea of strengthening our marriage through infidelity, then Jessica's slander about my poor conduct as a husband, along with neglecting my wife, had influenced Andrea before she opted to end our marriage. Now she resides in a 2-bedroom apartment with her discontent divorcee friend, and her standing among colleagues and family is deteriorating. When Andrea's mother discovered she had traveled to the Caribbean with another man, she reached out to me, assuming our separation stemmed from arguments. The message that her daughter left me for other bed contacts caused her to distrust. I urged her to speak directly with Andrea for the truth. Andrea's mother questioned her. "Andrea, why did you leave your home? What's going on between you and Robert? Is he mistreating you?" "No, Mom, he's not mistreating me, but he doesn't fulfill my needs for excitement right now. Rob doesn't make me feel wanted. I crave that feeling. I don't feel attractive to him, so I seek it elsewhere. I want some enjoyment before Rob and I start a family. I need this now, but I'll return to him when he appreciates me more, and everything will be fine. You'll see." Andrea's mother was shocked by her words. "Dear, if you have affairs with other men, Robert won't want you as his wife. Cheating will ruin your marriage. Don't you realize that?" "I'm sure Rob loves me, Mom. He understands why I need this. I'll come back home in a few months, maybe a year at most, and then we can have children." "Andrea, you need to wake up and go home now, or there won't be a marriage or a husband to return to. And there won't be any children with him, do you understand?" "Mom, I know Rob loves me, and I know what I'm doing." Even her mother couldn't reason with her. So adopting the principle of what's good for the goose is good for the gander, I had resolved to see if I was prepared for a new chapter in my life. It had been about 3 months since Andrea departed, and it was time for me to move forward. Summoning the courage, I asked one of the women I cycled with out on a date. I simply craved some female companionship and a break from the monotonous routine I'd been stuck in. Ever since my wife left, my days were filled with work, the gym, cycling, and sleep, rinse and repeat, waiting for this ordeal to pass. That was the extent of it. A part of me hoped Andrea would come to her senses, put an end to this nonsense, and return home. But that seemed unlikely. I had to confront the reality. She probably wasn't coming back, at least not as the wife I married or the woman I thought I knew. It seemed she was relishing her newfound freedom, seeking the excitement and validation as a woman that was lacking in our marriage. Those are the things psychologists claim motivate married women to cheat on their husbands. So I attempted to arrange a meetup without coming off as overly eager or solely interested in hitting on someone. I realized that could be awkward. My aim was to build rapport within my cycling group and vice versa before considering asking one of the women out. I didn't want it to seem like a sympathy date. Given the close-knit nature of our cycling circle, most of my friends were aware of my separation from my wife, and it's possible some knew about Andrea's active dating life. In a smaller city like ours, word travels fast and gossip inevitably circulates. When I invited a woman named Diane to join me for drinks and a meal, I was pleasantly surprised when she accepted. I aimed for a casual and relaxed atmosphere, without attaching too much significance to the outing. I suggested we go kayaking on the lake near the city, before dining. Having had experience with kayaking some years back, I assured Diane it would be enjoyable, despite her lack of prior experience. She expressed interest in trying it out, so our plans solidified into a date. The meal and drinks would follow our outdoor activity. It turned out to be a fantastic experience. Diane had a blast kayaking. We paddled for about 10 miles over 3 hours. Afterwards, we headed to a nice restaurant for a delicious meal and drinks. I opted for a steak with fries and a tasty local craft beer, while Diane enjoyed a pasta dish with white wine. It was relaxed, casual, and pressure-free. Later, we grabbed some ice cream from a stand on the waterfront boardwalk. I drove her home and expressed how much I enjoyed the day. I almost kissed her on the cheek, but she surprised me by planting a kiss on my lips, which was delightful and unexpected. To avoid seeming too eager, I waited until our regular Tuesday cycling meetup to suggest another date. Diane caught me off guard when she mentioned she thought I didn't have a good time because I hadn't called. I assured her that it was quite the opposite. I had a wonderful time, especially being with her. We planned to meet up again on Saturday, this time for a round of golf. I read online that there's a delicate balance when it comes to texting and calling someone you're interested in. It's often seen as a red flag if someone is constantly texting or calling, as it can come across as too needy, causing the other person to pull away. So, I decided to text Diane on Friday, letting her know I was excited about our golf plans for Saturday and suggesting a time for me to pick her up, while also giving her the option to meet me at the golf club if she preferred. She responded asking me to pick her up, so we arranged for the early afternoon. We had a wonderful time on the golf course, even though neither of us will ever be pros. That evening, we had dinner at my place, enjoying a barbecue and a bottle of wine. Later, when it was time for me to drive her home, she surprised me by taking the car keys and placing them on the kitchen counter, then asking to see the bedroom. The next morning, I woke up and saw an amazing woman lying next to me, her hand casually resting on my body. Diane possessed dark, luscious long hair, captivating green eyes, and flawless skin. Although a faint scar adorned her chin from a past bicycle accident, it only added character to her already beautiful face. Standing tall at about 5'11", she boasted a slender figure, likely weighing around 140 lbs, and maintained exceptional physical fitness. Diane worked as a nurse in the pediatric department of the local hospital, exuding genuine compassion in all her actions. There was an undeniable magnetism about her that had drawn me in from the moment we met. We enjoyed breakfast together on my patio, but soon the conversation shifted towards me and my plans, particularly regarding divorce. It was a delicate topic, as I sensed the direction it was heading. Diane sought clarity on my intentions before investing emotionally in our relationship, a reasonable request indeed. After all, no woman wants to invest time in someone who might reconcile with their estranged spouse in a matter of weeks. As I recounted the peculiar way Andrea had explained her departure to Diane, her expression confirmed what I had suspected all along. Andrea wasn't coming back. That realization served as the gentle push I needed to proceed with the next phase of my plan. On Monday morning, I phoned my attorney and instructed her to engage her investigator for the task. My aim was to ascertain the extent of my wife's involvement with other men prior to initiating divorce proceedings. It turned out she had been seeing several men, mostly married, and they frequented Jessica's apartment for post-bar and club gatherings. 2 weeks later, Andrea was served with the divorce papers, initiating a cascade of events. That night, she showed up at my doorstep holding a large brown envelope, her expression troubled. "What brings you here tonight, Andrea?" "Honey, someone delivered these documents to me today." "Why did you file for divorce?" "I told you I'd be home soon. I even considered coming back this week. We could start working on the baby we discussed." I invited her to come in and sit in the kitchen. "It's a little late for that, Andrea," I reminded him. "I told you straight out not to leave, but you decided to leave anyway." "Honey, I explained to you that I needed to find myself and feel confident," she objected. I couldn't help but chuckle. "So, do you feel confident now? Have you thoroughly studied your attractiveness and relationships? Have you met interesting people and experienced enough intimacy?" I began to pour out my soul. "Because it looks like it is. I haven't heard much from you since you left. You didn't even call me on my birthday, probably because you were with one of your boyfriends in the Dominican Republic. Your own mother called me, wondering why you didn't even call on Mother's Day. Dear God, have you been in bed with someone all this time? Darling, I love you deeply, and I realize I may have crossed a line. I'm heading home today." "Absolutely not." "Honey, what do you mean? I'm still your spouse, and this is still my home. I'm going to Jess's place to collect my belongings, and I'll be back in a few hours." "No, you can't. Have you read the documents you received? There's a court order stating you can't come within 500 feet of this house until the divorce is finalized. Technically, you're in violation of the order. I won't report you, but you need to leave, and we'll settle everything in court." Andrea began to grasp the seriousness of our wedding vows: love, honor, cherish, fidelity, and the commitment to not engage with other people. This house doesn't mean much to me, Andrea. If you want it, it's yours. My half is worth around $150,000 since it's almost paid off. If you prefer, we can sell it and split the proceeds. It's that simple. But you're not moving back in, at least not while I'm here. I escorted her to the door, closed it, and locked it behind her. A month later, we managed to avoid going to court and settled the divorce quietly. Andrea received half of our assets as she was legally entitled to. The house was sold and I moved forward. Andrea resumed her new routine. I learned from a friend that the charter school where she worked had advised her to keep her social life more discreet. It seemed that some parents were uncomfortable with the fact that she was dating multiple men in the area and didn't want her influencing their children. Most of the complaints came from the mothers who privately expressed their disdain for the woman teaching their kids. It's possible that some of the fathers were among her romantic interests. She was later diagnosed with a non-fatal sexually transmitted disease, which required a 1-year break from bed life. This did not cause serious concern, as she was already pregnant. It turned out that one of her partners was to blame for this. She became careless about taking birth control pills and abused alcohol. Although the girl's father remained unknown, he bore a striking resemblance to one of the school teachers, a married man. My divorce from Andrea was finalized, freeing me from her. It's been about a year since the trouble with Andrea started. I bought a new house, got a promotion at work, and most importantly, Diana and I started living together. We are happy to announce 2 things. 1, our upcoming summer wedding, and 2, our upcoming parenthood, which is expected by Christmas.